So, welcome back to another episode of Uncut and Uncensored with Caroline Stanbury. And today I am joined by Kate Anthony, author of The D Word and the Guide to Divorce Survival podcast. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for
Very
having me.
excited to have you.
Thank
Yeah, super excited. I know, there we go. Crossing over. I love hearing I've been through all your questions and I'm super excited about this one because this is a question I get asked all the time. And when you actually made this so easy for me because I got a list of what we'd like to talk about, which no one normally does. So I want to talk about this. When do you really know it's over
It's such a good question.
or how?
Yeah, and it's such a good question. The average woman, I work mainly with women, but also because over 70% of divorces are initiated by women. It's usually the woman making this decision. And the average woman agonizes over this for at least 5 years. And that's a really long time to be in this limbo as I'm you're nodding along. I could tell you're like, yeah, been there. And so, when I went through this, there was no Instagram, there were no podcasts, there was no information out there. And when I got on the other side, finally, I thought there's got to be a better way. There's got to be an easier way for us to actually navigate this. And the way that I work with women now, the very first thing I have them do is really look at how they feel in their relationship. Because so often what we're doing is looking at the other person. Is what they're doing, does this rise to the level of, I should leave or it's worth leaving? And as women, it's really hard because we're socialized and conditioned to give up all of the things and to sacrifice ourselves and to make ourselves the least important, the lowest priority. And so when I work with women, I sort of help them put themselves first and really look at what they want and how they feel in this relationship. Do they feel loved and cherished? Do they feel lifted up? Do they feel like the best version of themselves? Do they like themselves in this relationship? And when you start asking the right questions, the answers become a lot clearer.
I mean, it's funny because we always say that. I mean, I know that mostly women leave relationships. Men are a little bit lazier or they get used to the comfort of it and, they stick it out.
Mhm.
But actually, I had dinner with someone the other day and it was a man. And we started talking about ourselves, exactly the same thing. And he had all these questions because it's kind of more acceptable for a woman to say she felt like this after 5 years. And actually, when you said 5 years, I laughed out loud because that's kind of where I was exactly. And he said the same thing. He said he'd sort of mulled over it for 5 years. So it was funny to hear him speak exactly every word you just said. It's not just female, it is
Mhm.
men, but we kind of do sort of always all this is geared towards women. My podcast
Sure.
is geared towards women too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's funny to hear a man say he felt exactly how we just explained we felt.
Yeah, yeah. And it's rarer, right? Partly because the way the design of marriage is that it benefits men, right? We tend to do more of the emotional labor. We tend to do more of the domestic labor. Right? And so it really is. Men love marriage. Like it totally works for them for the most part, except for those that it doesn't, right? And so there is the I think it's more rare for men to be dissatisfied in the ways that women are. Um, I think it's more common for them to be sexually dissatisfied, all those things. Um, but sort of on the broader emotional scale, I think it is more likely for women. But I love that. I mean, I don't love it for him. I feel terrible for him. But yes, I think that dissatisfaction and that questioning. I mean, look, we took a vow, right, before God and all of our friends, and we spent, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on this big affair. The idea of leaving and we have children, right? So, yeah, it's a hard decision to make. There's so many reasons to stick it out that are bigger than that we put before our own selves and our own feelings about it.
So, I mean, that's the point because sometimes, obviously, I know a lot of women who, after babies or, sort of lose themselves, everyone thinks a baby's going to sort of like bring their family together and be this amazing experience. And for a lot of people, it's just not.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
not what they imagined.
Right.
And, I feel like that's when a lot of affairs start on both sides, right? So men feel neglected, women feel under, not sexy anymore and just, like they've been out of commission for so long.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder, i- that's when a lot of these questions come up. Like,
Yeah.
is it because I've always maintained an affair is not a reason always to leave.
Agreed. Agreed.
Affairs can be, yeah,
Agreed.
affairs can be worked through, and that is they can be symptomatic, they don't have to be the end, right? Depending on how you handle it the
Y-
other side. But
that's right. That's right.
what are your views on this? Because I have quite strong views that that's not the reason for most divorces.
Oh, I totally agree. I think affairs don't occur in vacuums, right? And if you're willing to look at what happened and why it occurred, um, and what the symptoms are, as you said, right? What is it that's missing in this relationship that had me or had the other person stray? And if you're willing to be honest about it, and if you're willing to take full responsibility and actually go to therapy and really work through what the core issues are, then absolutely. They are recoverable, and sometimes they can be the catalyst for greater change and greater intimacy and more open lines of communication for sure. Um, I think it depends on the reason for it, but it really depends on the level of personal responsibility somebody's willing to take for it, and the level of exploration that they're willing to take.
I do feel that like there are just different reasons. It's quite hard. Sometimes you can be great parents together, you can be great friends,
Hmm.
you could be great business partners. But then to have the intimacy too, it's super rare to find all of these things that we're
Absolutely.
looking for in one person.
Yeah.
So are we already setting ourselves up for failure? Can we have different relationships or different things? Like now I'm divorced and I never saw myself as divorced. I actually love the relationship, although he'd probably hate me for saying this, that I'm getting with my ex-husband because we're better business partners in parenting than we were together, as far
Absolutely.
as I'm concerned.
Right. Well, right. And that's what matters, right? I totally agree. My ex-husband and I are way better friends and co-parents than we ever were married people. And mine would agree with that. Um, and yeah, I think that we do. I think, up until really the 20th century, marriages were business partnerships. They were about, land holdings or, right. These were not romantic matches. And we tend to put all of our eggs in one basket where we are expected to have the intimacy, the sexuality, the, intellectual curiosity, that like everything that before the single family home and the division of sort of the sort of downfall of the community and the tribal aspect that we sort of came from, we used to get those things from other people. Women would get their emotional needs met from other women. We would be with each other all day and we would be, cooking or whatever, picking berries, harvesting, while men went out to hunt. Like we weren't getting emotional needs met from our male partners. And now, when we have divided ourselves in these sort of, concrete boxes and put ourselves in these relationships in this way, yeah, we absolutely are trying to get all of these needs met by one person that, in many cases, they're not capable of or really qualified to meet, right? If I was trying to get all of the intimacy, women share really beautiful relationships with one another. I could never expect a man to have that kind of relationship. It's different, and that's okay. So, yeah, I think we do. We set ourselves up for failure by expecting too much from this one person.
So, that's also the question that I think a lot of women have is, because they look outside of their marriages at certain times for a different type of sex, a different time for intimacy.
Mhm.
That it's very easy for a man to come in when you've had your children and done all that and sort of sweep somebody off their feet, right?
Mhm.
And sort of, give them the side that maybe has become more relaxed in a marriage. But how do you stop? You see that how do you know that that's just a sexual thing and it's not reality, or is that's what you should marry, and then you have the other side with the family and everything else, which is where I am right now,
Mhm.
which is kind of amazing. And that's why I get so scared with having the thought of having children with Sergio, because I'm like, oh, I don't want to ruin what we have, because I know what's the other side.
Oh, totally. I mean, I think that, when you have once you have children with somebody, the relationship completely changes. Um, I know that I've spoken to men who are like, I have a hard time seeing you as a sexual being when I've watched you give birth. Right? Like there's
Yeah.
something about that that's really not sexy. It's beautiful and all of those things, but like, oh my God, you know? And so, yeah, I do think, I don't know, like, which is the one you should marry, which is the one, right? But um, I think maybe, uh, it's like when we get into a relationship, you're living with someone, Esther Perel sort of talks about like maintaining some form of mystery. Some of the um, attraction and the connection that we have is the mystery, is the curiosity, is I don't know what you're thinking. Not in a scary way, but in a like, ooh, I'm really interested and curious about this person. And I think that when you've lived with someone for 10 years and you've had children with them, there's no more mystery. There's no more curiosity. You have seen my bits for like turned inside out and all of the things, and like, yeah, I think that does have an impact. Um there's a part of me that wants to say like maybe men should not be in the delivery room with us. Maybe it should be all of our girlfriends and all of the women, right? Maybe there should be
Well, I'm
that mystery.
fucked.
Well, yeah, totally. Oh yeah, me too. Like we all have.
Sergio was in there for my facelift, so pretty much no, there's no mystery there. But I feel like I keep it going because he's on his toes, because we're both so busy and we work together, but we sort of like drive each other. But I do feel like children just rip that sort of crazy
Yeah.
away, because
Yeah.
you have to get into this routine.
Yeah, and also, they demand an attention that takes away from your partner by necessity, right? And so, I think there's all sorts of dynamics in that. And also, I think sometimes we marry the person that we want to have kids with, or we get married to somebody who, first of all, we're picking when we're much younger and we're picking for different reasons. And the person that we picked to have children with may not be the person that we would choose later on in life, um, to actually have a longer term partnership with.
Agreed. I mean, I think it's and I think when you get through a certain stage as well, then it's so hard, because as you said, women, we kind of all mourn the loss of a relationship, right? We all have
Yeah.
this idealistic view of what it's meant to look like, what our family's going to look like. And if we leave, we were this horrible person that gave up on our families and everybody's going to hate us. And look, to a certain extent, by the way, that's true. I definitely lost friends. I definitely made enemies. I
Mm.
definitely hurt my family, and and I was the one that initiated, right?
Yeah.
Um, but 6 years on, when people asked me, and everybody told me not to do it, nobody told me to do it.
Hmm.
But 6 years on, I would say the grass is greener for
Yes,
many different reasons.
that's right.
And I think I really want to tell, and that's what I was saying to the guy that I met the other night, who was like feeling guilt and everything else. I'm like, well, you're not here to live for everybody else. And I think that that's something that we need to uncondition ourselves to feel, that
Hmm.
we owe other people so much.
That's right.
Why do I owe them my life?
My
My
life.
kids are going to grow up and,
Right.
yeah,
It's my whole
my
life.
kids are going to grow up and leave.
Yes.
Um,
maybe.
You know, well, yeah,
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah.
My parents won't be here.
Hmm.
So, it's only me to answer to anymore, right? So why do I owe, or why do I have to live by what other people feels right for me?
That's right. That's right. And I always quote that the Mary Oliver poem, what will you do with your one wild and precious life? This is it. It's one time around. We don't get do-overs with this. And so, we as humans, we grow and we evolve and we change. And I would assert that if you're not growing and you're not evolving and you're not learning about yourself and developing yourself, like what are you even doing here? So if that evolution and that change means a shift in the relationship, then great. That's what that means. And yeah, it does suck. Not every decision is going to please everybody, and this decision certainly isn't going to please everybody. But as you said, I don't know anyone who has gone through this because it's such an agonizing decision. Most people don't wake up in the morning and go, "You know what? I think I'm going to get divorced today." Like that's not how this happens. We agonize over it for years and years and years and years. So once someone has made that decision, they have weighed the pros and cons. They know what they're giving up. They know what they're walking away from. They very often don't know what they're walking into. But almost everyone that I have ever worked with, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, have all never regretted it because it has taken this much work to get to the other side. And almost everybody says, yeah, the grass is greener.
It's a journey. And the grass is greener for a multitude of reasons, not just because of your partner. And the partner's great, by the way, because as you said before, I think to get here, you really made a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was a lot scarier because of his age. And, a lot of women write to me now going, I've met a younger guy, and I'm seeing it becoming more and more of a thing. And not just for the obvious, which is obviously he's young, he's hot, and you're going to have great sex. Put that aside. There is a lot of powerful women
Mm-hmm.
who are seeing it for themselves because, a lot of older men don't like the kind of lifestyles we have.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the honest truth. It's not because, Sergio, I went over after Sergio for his youth. And like, I can genuinely say, I don't think men my age were ever that interested in me. Not that, I mean, obviously I was married and things like that for a long time, but
Yeah.
men that always flirted with me were younger.
Mm.
And I think I intimidated men who were my age because they either, I mean, a lot of men don't want reality TV, forget that. But I also ran a big business. I'm also very loud. I come with a big life.
Mm-hmm.
And, I travel around and, most men have 9 to 5 jobs and all of these things. And I look too expensive, I think.
Sure. Sure.
And I come with 3 kids.
And you come with 3 kids. Yeah. And I think, the men, I'm single in Los Angeles and I'm 53. And, I am not what most men in their 50s certainly are looking for. They're definitely looking for younger.
Yeah, they're looking for 20s,
They're
30s,
looking for 20s.
100%.
That's right. And I'm not particularly interested in dating men in their 60s and 70s. So,
No.
that's just the reality of that. And also, I think a lot of men, certainly Gen X men, they don't know what to do with strong, successful women who don't, quote, need a man, right? I would love a partnership. I would love someone to, cuddle up with on the couch, at the end of a day. But it's not something that I'm so desperate for that I'm willing to compromise any of my very, very firmly held values around. And a lot of men my age don't particularly want that.
No, because now you're difficult.
Now, right.
And
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. And that's, I have a lot of successful women like this who are single. And, when they all laughed at me with my, young boy and my crazy, midlife crisis.
Yeah.
I mean, I was kind of with them.
Sure.
Right. I saw girlfriends of mine do it before and fail. So I understood absolutely the backlash. But 6 years on, I'm still in it.
Hmm.
So now it's a proper
That's
relationship.
right.
And, regardless of whether it ends or doesn't, it's a proper relationship. And it has been one of the most amazing relationships I've had because it is a true partnership. Instead of me trying to fit myself into a box that makes somebody who's traditional
That's right.
and wants this traditional life happy. I never wanted that traditional life. If I cook, you clean, bad luck. If I'm cooking, you can chop with me. I want to go to the supermarket with you. I'm not going on my own,
Right.
so I can bring it back for you.
Right.
That's how I feel. Like
That's
I,
right.
I enjoy the supermarket if we go around together. I have such a laugh in the supermarket with Sergio, and before it was such a like, oh, I've got to go to the supermarket.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Now I have someone come with me.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's
And
great.
I,
And that's
I,
and that's what we should all aspire to, regardless of age, right? I don't care if that person comes in, someone my age, someone younger, even older, right? If there's youth and
mm-hmm.
excuse me, youth and vibrancy, like, okay, that's fine. But it's that patriarchal box that I will never fit into, ever. Never have. Never
Yeah.
will. Yeah. And that was, actually one of the greatest things about my marriage. Is that we were like that. We would do grocery shopping. If I cooked, he was doing dishes. While he was cooking, I was putting our son to bed. Like whatever it was, there was always and I was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And my husband worked a lot, but when we were home, there was always an equal division of domestic labor, and that's something I appreciate about him a lot.
So here's my question. So you get to the point where we've all mulled over it and everyone's done it. You've written your pros and cons. You've pictured your life without that person, what it could look if you get nothing, all of the above. You've done worst case scenario,
Hmm.
but best case scenario, you never meet anyone else again. How do you tell your husband?
Oh,
Because that's a question I get asked the whole time. I think a
oh
lot
yeah.
of women stop right there because they're so petrified of that initial conversation.
I'm so glad you asked that because I have a very specific way that I have women have this conversation that's very successful. Um, the first thing to understand, right? It's right there in the language. We always say like, "Well, I asked him for a divorce." Well, honey, you're not asking permission at this point. If you have made a decision, you're not asking for a divorce. You are letting him know that you're done and that you are moving forward with divorce. So it really is in the language that you use, and also in your expectations and your perspective around it. So this is not a conversation. This is a declaration. And this initial conversation should have one goal, and that is to impart this information. You're not making any decisions, you're not talking about how it's going to go, you're not who's going to have the kids and what's the schedule going to be like and who's getting spousal support and like none of it. The division of assets, that is not happening in this conversation. This conversation is, hey, I really appreciate X, Y, and Z. You find, you give them a shit sandwich, right? So you find the things that you appreciate. I appreciate the way that we co-parent. I know that we've worked really hard on this marriage. Unfortunately, I have decided that I can no longer continue with this marriage, and I think it's time for not I think, but it's time for us to call it. And I'm gonna file for divorce. Like, say it, and then they're going to have the reaction that they're going to have, and your spouse best, right? So what that they're going to get angry, or they're going to start crying, they're going to beg, they're usually blindsided. No matter how many times you've told them that you're reaching the end of the line, no matter how many times you've said, hey, I can't do this anymore, when you're done, they will be blindsided. And I never saw it coming, despite the fact that you told them 100 times that it was coming. um, and so whatever their response is, your response to their response is really something along the lines of, I understand that you're really upset by this. I want to give you some time to process it, but for now I just wanted to let you know that my decision is final. and they're gonna, shoot a hand out of, oh, but what about this? They're gonna try to take control of the narrative, right? You have one objective, which is to impart this information. They're gonna shift the narrative to, I'm gonna take all the money and you're not gonna get anything. Uh, the response that you're gonna give to that is, we have a lot of really big decisions to make. Today is not the time to make those decisions. There are very clear laws about these things. So um, I'm going to give you some time to process this. But for now, I just want you to know that my decision is final. And then,
I think that's the problem,
yeah,
because you get sort of pushed into a corner where you go, we could go to therapy.
that's right.
We could take. What did I do? I did. Let's take the summer,
Yeah,
and you do you, and I'll do me.
right.
And actually, that just prolongs the agony because you're both off doing your own thing, but it's ridiculous.
That's
It
right.
doesn't work.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the like, let's go to therapy thing normally happens, usually comes from somebody who you've been begging to go to therapy for years and they have said no, or you have been going to therapy and it hasn't worked, right? And so if you are done, be done, right? And this is the hardest part. It's like you are making this big declaration, this big change, and they're going to use everything in their arsenal to push back against it. And your job is to just hold steady and say, I understand that you have big feelings about this. I know this isn't what you want. I'm very sorry, but this is my final decision. And you're just going to repeat that over and over and over again, right? What about the kids? What are we going to do about the house? How about this? What about this? We have a lot of big decisions to make. Today is not the day to make those decisions. For today, I just want to make sure you understand that my decision is final.
I feel like when you say these kind of things, because speaking to my friends and what happened to me, that it doesn't hit at the beginning. Actually,
No. Yeah, sure.
more than the crying and the begging, that didn't really didn't happen for me, and didn't happen for my friends. It was kind of it was more of acceptance, and then I heard later, the aftermath of,
Yeah.
that it hit them.
Yes, there's the resignation. Sometimes there's just resignation, right? Like, and they're in shock, essentially. And then they go through all the stages of grief, and then in the ensuing weeks or months, right? Then all of a sudden, I actually have a bingo card, like a how they'll react bingo card, because it's so predictable, right? They're going to beg you to go to therapy. They'll find God. They'll send you marriage memes. They'll clean everything in the house. They'll fix the gutters. They'll do all of the things. They suddenly are going to be like the world's best husband or world's best father. And you can sort of have empathy for like their last grasps on this. And so, and then there's denial. They'll just pretend like it never happened, and they'll just, go on about their business. And
Yeah, because through marriage, you have arguments all the time and say, I'm leaving, and then it doesn't happen.
right.
So I think that's also very difficult, because this may be the time you've decided, but they may not believe you.
That's right. That's right. They're not going to believe you because you've said it 100 times. And so this time, what's so different? And so that's what makes it so hard. Is I work with women who, they've been waiting now 2-3 years for their spouses to file. And I'm like, honey, he's not filing. He has no reason to file. If you want this marriage to end, they're like, do I have to do everything? And my answer is, yeah, you do. You do. If you want to get divorced, you have to do everything. So the only way to make them know that you are serious is to actually file the papers. Don't blindside them with the papers. Please don't just file and have them served unless you're in danger. You have to have the conversation in person. You have to, if you're safe to do so. And then, but eventually you're going to say, hey, just want to let you know that I filed, and, you'll be emailed or whatever, however it works where you live. Because they're going to think that you're not going to do it like you haven't all the other times until you actually do it. I have a
The
friend.
trouble is when you
Yeah.
face somebody
Mhm.
face to face, it's a very difficult
It is.
conversation. I think that's where a lot of people bottle out.
That's right. I think you're absolutely right. And that's why it's really important to have this very specific, clear sort of map for the conversation. Write it out, have a script. It is perfectly fine for you to hold a piece of paper or your phone while you're having this conversation. That's perfectly fine. It's the hardest conversation you'll ever have besides telling your children. And so yeah, you should be supported in it. And yeah, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be hard. There's going to be so much pushback. So you need to be prepared for all of that pushback.
And it is the emotional manipulation that comes with it, I think.
Yes.
Because they will use their children as a weapon. And I think that that's, that's something actually that worked in my favor, because if I did want to, or if I did have like any doubts, or like was thinking, oh, maybe, not to do it so fast or to do it, I think, when the kids got involved, that took that away from me. It was already done. It was out there.
Mm-hmm.
So since it was out there was no need for me to feel that guilt. I couldn't take it back from them. They couldn't unhear it.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
for me, it made it easier not to make it final, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
It made it easier that I just had to keep going all the way through.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and it is like once your kids know, and also a lot of my clients, their kids are begging them, like some of these relationships are so toxic that the kids are like, can you please get divorced? But, people stay in these marriages, unhappy marriages for their children all the time. And it's not what's best for your kids, right? Your kids deserve to see the best version of you. They deserve to see the best version, the best model for healthy relationships. And if this relationship is not healthy, if it's not happy, if you don't want this relationship for your kids, then you should get out of it for your kids.
Let me just address this as well, because I think a lot of people that have been married, say 20 years, even 30 years, that are getting married, divorced.
Yeah.
They're like, they have grown kids, right? And then you get a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
A lot of fucking pushback. Actually, more pushback than you probably do with young kids. And with, because there's either money involved, they're like, they don't want to see their mum on their own. They've grown up, they've moved out of the house, they've got kids.
Yeah.
And if there's inheritance and all of these things involved, they don't want another partner. And then it can get really ugly, because not only are you saying goodbye to them, but then you've got, big children saying this isn't happening. And yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, it's not their life. They've grown and they've had their life, and now it's your turn. Right? And so your kids don't get to make that decision for you.
Genuinely, I hope if you're listening to this, you hear that, because, I've spoken to a few people and they get so scared and so bullied into staying by their children for whatever reason it is. They don't want another brother and sister because there's inheritance. They don't want another wife because there's money. First of all, you made that money. You spend it where you want to. You want to set fire to it when you die, do it. That's your choice.
That's right.
Right? It is your choice.
Absolutely. And how petulant. It's none of your fucking business. Right? This is my life. This is my life.
There you are, enjoying your lives with
Right.
your wives and your children. I would never, ever, ever tell my children to stay one day in a marriage they weren't happy.
That's right.
Not for anything. I would say, absolutely, you're free to go. Everybody's free to do what they want. So I absolutely, and I wonder if it's it's one more generation above us. I think it's dying now, where they're going to feel so responsible, because I think we're so vocal now.
Yeah.
This generation, my generation, is so vocal. I mean, I'm probably the last. I still have a lot of friends that think what I did was wrong, or other people are wrong for getting divorced. I think the next generation won't be like this. And,
Yeah, I
and I
agree.
think the one above us really struggles with getting divorced, because of, expectation. And I would say that children, don't have that right. It's very nice that you want to bring up your children in a one family home. It's very nice that you want to give them the best life as a family, but you can give your children a wonderful life as a two household family. You really can.
Yeah.
I would say the most important thing to get down when you get divorced is your relationship with your ex.
Absolutely.
Get a good relationship and you can really, really fucking have it all.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Divorce. So, divorce, the sort of mythology that divorce screws up kids is completely false. The research does not bear this out. How you go through it can screw them up. So, as you said, have a good relationship, stay away from all of the toxicity. It's toxicity, whether it's in the marriage or in the divorce, that will screw up your kids. But the children of divorce from sort of happily divorced people do very well, and they also learn so much from that. We get to teach our kids that relationships aren't black and white, that there are gray areas, that you can get along with somebody that you have had heated relationship pockets with for a long time. My ex and I have gone through so much together, so much. I wrote in the acknowledgments in my book, my ex-husband once wrote to me, "Our relationship is vast and it can't always stay in narrow lanes. The 25 years of closeness has twists and turns and can't be categorized simply." And it was the most true thing that he ever said to me. And I continue to write in the acknowledgments, we have one of the most complex relationships in the world. People who have loved each other, created a life together, broken up, and still remain connected for life. To do that successfully takes more work than most of us can imagine. And I think that when you do that work, you show your children what that looks like. That's an enormous gift. It's an enormous gift.
It's the most amazing one. And I think, that's an incredible place to sort of end this. I feel exactly the same way as I prepare for Christmas, where I will spend the night at my ex-husband's house while, with my children, and then have Christmas Day with them because they like me to wake up there and do stockings. And then I go home and all is well. And this is only 6 years down the line, having been married 18 years. I'm extremely proud of the new relationship that we have taken on and are taking on, where we can actually pick up the phone and have a laugh now.
Yeah.
Whereas before,
yeah.
I think we wanted to whack the phone over each other's head.
Yeah.
And it's true. And, we're so different. So I'm extremely happy to have got there and to have had have a wonderful man by my side now who I laugh every day with. And I can't thank my lucky stars enough that I pushed through, because it's so many times I could have begged to go back.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And look, there are times when, I talk to my ex-husband and I do want to whack him over the head, but then we move through it again because that's what we do. We've been doing that for over 25 years now. We keep going, and yeah, and then we will have a laugh, and we'll do Christmas together as well, and all of the things. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this. I think a lot of women will get a lot out of it, because it's something that people ask me every single day, and I wish I could, just give them the note and say this is how it is. But unfortunately, you have to go through it. Unfortunately, you go through those years of thinking. But Kate, how can everybody find you? Tell them where to look you up. And
well, my website is kateanthony.com, and everything is there. My book, the D Word, Making the Ultimate Decision About Your Marriage. So if you're struggling with this decision, my book is sort of the Bible for this. And that's everywhere books are sold. And my podcast is the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, anywhere you listen to podcasts. But you can find everything on my website, which is kateanthony.com.
Thank you so much for being on today. It was amazing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of Uncut and Uncensored with Caroline Stanbury.